This is single-handedly the quickest way to grow your online fitness coaching business. And no, it's not focused on shiny tactics, strategies, anything like that. Because before you even think about implementing any of those things or jumping ships to the next shiny thing that people are marketing to you, you first got to have clarity on what's actually going on in your business and where you are right now. If you don't know what the weaknesses are, what the strengths are, and you don't even track the data in the first place, then how are you meant to know what to implement next in order to unlock the next layer of growth in your business, right? Whether you're at 5K per month, 10K per month, there's always going to be a constraint that's stopping you from getting to that next level. And if you don't know what that is, then your focus is just going to be completely fucked. So I'm going to show you in this video how to even go about that in the first place. And it always starts with what I call a bottleneck analysis. So we've got the biz overview here, right? Just general business health, right? How many clients you've got, how many are churning, revenue, cash collected. And then you kind of want to look at the flow of traffic, okay? Now, most businesses have what I call a front engine, client acquisition engine, and then you've got your fulfillment engine, right? There's two parts there. The one that actually gets the clients, and then the one that actually fulfills on the service and gets them the results. That's it. And within these engines, you've got certain subsystems, okay, and processes of how you actually do each thing. So top of funnel, right? This is how you actually attract the right people in the first place. So we've got things like, we've got things that are inputs and we've got things that are outputs here. So Instagram posts, this is completely in your control. Views, this is an output, right? So let's say you've got a system for creating content, you've got your input, you've got the process, and you've got the output. And then in order to make that system better, you would do a series of iterations depending on if that system actually needs work or not. We've got Instagram profile visitors. So obviously the whole purpose of content is to push people to your profile, grab the follower, and then generate leads and calls. Then not everyone does this, but this is how I operate, is we have a VSL link in the bio. We don't lead anyone to the website or anything like that. We don't do opt-ins. We use what I call a Trojan horse VSL. And if you use a website such as Tap It, something like that, you can generate a deep link. You can actually track the amount of link clicks that you're actually getting on a weekly, monthly basis, right? Which gives us an idea of how many profile visitors you are taking to this conversion mechanism. Then we've got new followers, middle funnel, so inbound leads, outreach messages sent, how many positive replies are you getting, how many booked calls are you getting out of those conversations. Then we've got the nurturing mechanism, right, which is YouTube. So how many YouTube videos are you posting? What amount of views are you getting on a monthly basis? How many people are showing up? How many closed? How many lost? And also something that people don't take into consideration a lot of the time is what's the average cash collected per sales call? Are you getting a lot of paid in fulls? Obviously, that's a really good signal in terms of your messaging, your offer. Or are you really struggling to even get people over the line and you're just having to default to monthly payments every time, right? That's a signal that something is not quite where it should be. So let's have a look, all right? So we kind of know what the data points are based on the buyer's journey here. So example number one, right? It's an attention problem. You're posting consistently, but you're getting fuck all views, right? The constraint is attention. That's an easy one, okay? No one is really seeing the content. No one's really paying attention to it. And it's obviously not getting you any followers because you simply just don't have enough attention. So, you don't need a better sales script. You don't need a better website. Like all these things that you may be focusing on, you don't need another logo, like all these random things that people focus on when all they should be focused on is, okay, how good is my content right now? That's literally the biggest bottleneck in the business. So you need better hooks, you need better concepts, you need better topics, you need to get better at the skill of creating content so you can get more reach. Example two, right? You're getting a lot of views, okay? You've kind of cracked the ability to generate attention online, but people are seeing it. They're not actually following you. There's not enough depth. There's nothing grabbing them and bringing them to your profile, creating curiosity and intrigue in order to follow you and, actually seeing you as an authority and someone who can really help them. So the constraint here is usually positioning, right? You're being too generic. You're being too safe. There's nothing really pulling people in. There's no gravitational pull towards your brand, right? Your profile might look very generic. And in 2026, we know that attention and getting followers and getting sales, you're kind of, there's a lot of supply these days. And if you're not really standing out from the crowd, if you haven't really got the ball rolling yet and you're being too broad and too generic, people are simply just not going to follow you because you're competing against these people with millions of followers who are, being quite generic because they can get away with that. They've got the social proof, they've got the authority. But if you're just starting out, you've got to pick one segment of the market and really dominate it. That's how you really attract people in the first place. You dominate one segment of the market, and then when things are going really well and you want to expand horizontally, then you can do that. Okay. So people are watching but thinking, yeah, nice video. Maybe it's just too entertaining. Nothing's really pulling them. Instead of, I want to hear more from this person. There's that gravitational pull. Example 3 is you're getting followers, but you're getting no leads. All right. So the constraint here is lead generation. People are following you, but no one's raising their hand, or you're not really doing anything in order to attract and generate leads. Okay. So, this is usually like weak call to actions, weak offer communication. Maybe you are a coach, but you're not operating your Instagram profile as a business. Maybe you're being too much of an influencer. All right. You're entertaining people. That's why they follow you in the first place. But because you've maybe attracted like a broad audience who don't have a lot of buyer intent, then, the constraint, like it sounds great at the start. You're getting a lot of views, you're getting a lot of followers, but those are unfortunately vanity metrics and they do not drive revenue into the business. So if you kind of fall into that trap of caring too much about vanity metrics, it's just going to bite you in the ass because now you've got all these followers who aren't a good fit, who don't have good buyer intent. And one of the systems upstream has now come into a big constraint, and you kind of got to go back to the drawing board in order to restructure your whole content strategy to fix it. You might just not have a way of generating leads. You might not have a DM system. You might not be being proactive. You might just think to yourself, if I just post content, people will just land in my inbox. That worked in 2015, but in 2026, the competition is way too high. There's so many coaches out there who could help these people. And if you really want to capitalize on the opportunity of them showing interest, like when they first follow you, that's obviously when their interest is at its highest because they followed you for a specific reason. So by you being proactive and intercepting that interest when it's hot, you're more likely to be able to get into a conversation, right? If you wait too long, you're generating all these followers and you're not being proactive, the more time that goes on, the more they're just going to forget about why they even followed you in the first place, right? People follow thousands of people. So you've really got to intercept that while it's hot, while they remember why they followed you, while you're front of mind, and get the conversation going. Or simply you just don't have enough clear next steps, right? Obviously with the buyer's journey, people coming at the top, and there's certain steps that you're trying to push people down onto, right down to the sales mechanism. And there might just be a big gap there where you don't have a system in place in order to convert these followers into sales opportunities. Example 4 is lead to call problem. So you might be getting leads, you might be having a lot of conversations with people, but you're just not getting the calls booked, all right? So the constraint there is just lead nurturing. You don't have a system or a framework to follow in order to take these people from a conversation into a booked call. So yeah, they might be open to a conversation, but there's not enough urgency being created, or you're not creating a logical next step in order to continue helping them, to continue giving them value. Because remember, your job at that stage is not to sell your program. In fact, if you're too salesy at this stage, you're just going to end up pushing people away. Your only objective is to incentivize hopping on a call with you, to sell the call, right? And usually how you do that is you incentivize it with some kind of value. So they feel like they're getting something tangible, they're going to learn something, they're going to receive something, even if they don't decide to work with you, all right? And the next example is call to client. So this is a super simple one. It's just a sales problem, right? Your close rate is shit. You're not converting these calls into clients. So that's when all your focus should be getting better at sales, right? You're generating calls, which is often, a difficult thing to do. But when you crack that, when you've got the attention, the followers, the leads, and you're booking calls, you're in such a strong position. But unfortunately, people have a lot of friction around sales sometimes, whether it's limiting beliefs, they have some weird beliefs about money and things like that. But at the end of the day, if you're not good at sales, if you're not getting good at sales, you're doing these people a disservice because you're not able to have them adopt the beliefs they need to adopt in order to take action and ultimately change their life by joining your program. That's the kind of confidence that you need to have. You shouldn't have a problem with sales, like selling to people, because you're running a business at the end of the day. If you genuinely believe that what you sell is going to change people's lives, right, you're doing them a disservice. So, the issue's not content at this point. It's not lead gen. You just have to start reviewing your calls, analyze them, understand what are the parts where it goes wrong, do some sales training, right? And your only objective is to get your close rate up. Because if you get it up even by 10% when you have a lot of calls booked, that can massively change your business, right? And sales is the most important part, right? That's where the revenue is really being generated. Example 6, right, could be a client retention problem. So you've got 10 new clients this month, 5 clients leave, your churn rate is fucked. So you've got a fulfillment issue, right? Your onboarding maybe needs to be better. The way that you take someone from A to B needs to be a lot more structured. People maybe don't have a good vision inside your program. Maybe you're just taking it one week at a time. You don't really understand what goals they're trying to achieve, what's driving them, and you're unable to really spark that momentum and keep that momentum firing the whole way through your program. Because what ends up happening is when people don't design their program in a specific way around a roadmap and around goals, and obviously engineering the process in a way that keeps excitement high, is that, people just take it 1 week at a time. They forget why they're even doing it in the first place. If something goes kind of wrong, they instantly assume that they don't need you anymore. And oftentimes, to be honest, if you're not managing this well, someone who's doing really well can actually churn as well, because in their mind, they're paying you and they don't feel like they need you anymore when things are going well. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword there, and both ends of that sword need managed. So as I say, right, it's just the buyer's journey, right? You're getting views, you're getting followers, you're getting leads, you're getting calls, you're getting clients, and you're keeping those clients for as long as possible. That's all it is. And the bottleneck is simply just the first place where people stop progressing through the buyer's journey. That's it. And it's your job to really identify where that choke point is so you can actually implement something and do something about it. Because by you focusing on 10 things at once, your focus is completely watered down. By you focusing on the thing that causes 80% of the issue, right, and you just work with extreme urgency to fix it, then obviously you're going to make much better progress. So if you could only improve one metric this month, which would cause the biggest downstream impact, that's how you need to be thinking, right? Do you need more views, more followers, more leads, more calls, more sales? And an important thing to note is symptoms versus constraints, right? This is where a lot of coaches kind of mess up a little bit. They identify a symptom and mistake it for the actual problem. For example, I need more clients. That's not a constraint, that's a desired outcome. Or my revenue is down. Again, it's not a constraint, it's a symptom. So your job is to keep asking why until you find the root cause of what's going on. So let's say revenue is down. Why is that? Not enough clients. Why? Not enough sales calls. Why? And for example, you just keep going down until you figure out what the actual root cause of the issue is. So you've got the symptom, and then the cause of that is usually just right behind it. So that allows you to kind of find the constraint. And most coaches stop too early and end up solving the wrong problem. They focus on the symptom instead of the cause. And the fastest growing businesses are usually the ones that identify the real constraint the fastest and implement things to fix it. So energy and focus concentration. So this is why, by you focusing on the wrong things at the wrong time, you only have so much energy and focus throughout the day, throughout the week to actually spend on the business. Okay, so this is why you have to be so ruthless with your time and your energy to make sure that your business doesn't become stagnant because your focus isn't in the right place at the right time. So 80% of the reason for stagnation can often be narrowed down to one or two main constraints. I would argue one, right? 80-20 rule here. 80% of the reason why you're not growing is probably down to one thing, usually. And once you've identified the bottleneck, your job is simply just to concentrate your focus and energy on removing it. Every constraint is solved through one of these three things. So one is volume, right? You need to just put more reps in. You're not doing enough. More content, more outreach, more sales conversations, whatever it may be. 2 is skill. So perhaps just the quality of what you're doing needs more work. So you just need better execution, better hooks, better positioning, better content quality. You need to improve your sales skills. You need to get better at appointment setting. And then number three is systems, right? This is just a case of maybe it's a leverage problem, right? There's just a lot of, you're bogged up somewhere, and it's just a case of trying to remove friction, remove complexity. So it's a lot more simple and streamlined. So a better follow-up process, right? Perhaps you're having a lot of sales calls and you just don't have a follow-up process in order to convert the people who aren't ready at that time. Or, you might have a lot of DM conversations with people. Let's say you're gaining followers, you are reaching out to people, you are following a process, but when things die out a little bit, you're just not proactive about following up with these people. And the thing is, in our lead, appointment setting process, we do 8 follow-ups, right? With people who have shown interest. That's the key point here. We're not following up 8 times with someone who hasn't even responded in the first place. We're qualifying people. And if we identify someone who's a good fit, then we're following up with these people. And I can't tell you the amount of times where I've gained clients just from being persistent. Because at the end of the day, you're a random coach online. You're completely at the bottom of their priority list. And, things happen. So the mindset you have to have is, don't take it personally. Just have the mindset, give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Something could have popped up. They could have got busy. They could have just maybe slipped their mind. Their inbox might be full. You don't know, right? And the thing is, by you following up and showing that you actually care and being a genuine human being, people do appreciate that if it is a problem that they're looking to solve. And ultimately, they're going to go with the person who they have the best connection with, who cares more, who they have enough touch points with, right? More conversations with them, more time on brand with you. Because at the end of the day, it's a people's business, right? So you have to be nurturing these connections. Only 3% of people who find you will be ready to buy straight away. So by not having a follow-up system, you are leaving a lot of money on the table. But yeah, better onboarding, maybe a better content workflow, anything that causes friction that could be more efficient and is costing you time on a weekly basis, because obviously time is energy, then you're just bogging yourself down. And by you just streamlining stuff with a better system, you're giving yourself the capacity to do more work. That's all it is, right? Whether it's automating something so you don't have to do that anymore, or even hiring someone, or just having a more efficient workflow to get the job done. So before you spend another hour working on your business, ask yourself, is this increasing volume? Am I doing something to get better at this? Or am I implementing or improving a system that's in place or needs to be put in place? And if the answer is no, then it's probably a distraction, to be honest. And the thing is about most PTs and coaches is they do not have a work ethic problem, right? They're so passionate about helping people. They put in the work. They want to do this. They want to grow the business so they can make more impact. They just have a focus problem, right? They don't know what to focus on, in what order, at what time, and shiny object syndrome kills them off. It's a focus problem, right? So they spend hours redesigning logos, tweaking websites, changing their offers, their content strategy, consuming more information, right? While the actual bottleneck just remains untouched and they don't even know about it. So more activity does not equal more progress. The goal is to identify the constraint and attack it with extreme urgency until it's no longer the constraint. That's how business works. That's how you scale, right? You look at the data, you identify the constraint, and then you put as much effort as possible. 80% of your effort should be going into that one thing, while everything else is on a minimum effective dose sort of level of effort to keep things ticking. But your primary focus should be attacking that bottleneck until it's no longer a bottleneck. And as you scale your revenue, there'll just always be another bottleneck, right? You crack 10K per month. There is now another bottleneck stopping you from getting 20K per month, 50K, 100K. So by you just having this this ability to just focus on what matters at that specific time, it's honestly a superpower, and it's a superpower most coaches don't acquire, to be honest. Complexity is the enemy, right? That's your battle at all times. And being focused is a skill in itself, to be honest. And it's not something you just crack. It's a battle that happens every day and a series of decisions that you're making. And you just always have to be conscious of it, right? Every decision you make to do something or to not do something is a decision that could potentially stop your business from growing. So you've got the data, you know what the bottleneck is. Now it's like, okay, you have to allocate your time order to fix this. So you should really be using Google Calendar, right? If you got it set up with Calendly or whatever, but you should be using it for your productivity as well. And I always start by putting in my non-negotiables first. So if you're a personal trainer, that might be your PT sessions, that might be family commitments, when you train, when you sleep, when you do admin, your existing content flow, eating, downtime, anything that for you is a non-negotiable based on your life circumstances, your responsibilities. That stuff's got to go in first, because then what that's going to do is it's going to display all the time you have around those things in order to allocate time to certain things, and you can then start to prioritize what's actually important. So all this time around these things are potential available growth hours. Okay, so you can actually look at your whole schedule from a bird's eye view and say, how many hours per week can I realistically dedicate to growing or improving the business? Not idealistic, realistic, right? And we can only work with what you have. So even if it's 2 hours per week where you just sit down and you actually focus on fixing the things that are going to help drive revenue or get people better results, is time well spent. So as long as you're moving along the right path each week and your focus is on the right place, even 2 hours per week can make a massive difference. So step 3 is protecting those hours, right? So Google Calendar, you want to schedule these blocks in. You want to tell yourself what it is you're actually doing inside that block. A lot of people work randomly, and that ruins your focus and your ability to go into a flow state. If you actually plan what you're doing on a weekly basis and you know what you're doing, when you're doing it, and how you're doing it, that means as soon as you start a work block, you can instantly tap into that deep sort of flow state, because you know exactly what you need to do and you can just start doing it, instead of being in like more of a creative or planning sort of mindset, which in my opinion, your planning time and your execution time should be kept separate, because it's just a completely different frame of mind. Okay, when you go into these execution blocks, you should already have planned exactly what you need to do and how you're going to do it. So then this becomes just a non-negotiable for you, right? So every growth block must directly attack the primary constraint. That's the whole point. Not admin, not learning, not tweaking graphics, not doing random posts, constraint work only. That's it. And 6, right, is obviously understanding how to actually do it, right? How are you going to fix this constraint? Now, this is where having a proven blueprint or having a mentorship or having the support you need to actually do this based on, people who have gone through this process before becomes super valuable. Because when you've identified the bottleneck, right, anyone can do that. Anyone can follow this video and identify what the current bottleneck is. But the problem about that is when it comes to actually fixing the bottleneck, if you've never done it before, then you might not necessarily know what needs to happen. You might not have the frameworks, the systems, the knowledge, the data, the trial and error in order to do it in the most efficient way possible. So you want to create a list of every activity that could potentially solve the constraint, right? If I was to dive into how to fix every constraint in this one video, it would literally be a 20-hour video. So I'm not doing that. So you need to use just a bit of common sense here, right? So you want to rank all of these activities that you think could help solve the bottleneck and rank them by impact and ease, okay? How likely is it to solve the bottleneck and how easily can it be implemented, right? That's kind of like the sweet spot. And those are the things that you should be focusing on first, because these are smaller levers you can pull that can potentially have a big impact, right? A lever that is really big, long, hard, and you don't have the experience to know if it's even going to work or not, is a bit of a gamble, okay? So you want to minimize that gambling as much as possible. So if your bottleneck is follower growth, you might want to think about positioning, your hooks, your stronger call to actions, having a better profile. So when someone actually clicks on your profile, they want to follow you, or even just something as simple as putting more out there, right? More content volume, giving yourself more opportunities, more testing. Not a new website, a new offer, a new software, or a new logo, okay? Because these activities don't directly attack the constraint. And the constraint test is, right, before you do anything, just make sure that you ask yourself, does this directly remove the bottleneck, or does it have a high potential to do so? And if the answer is no, then don't do it. Right? This shouldn't be within your growth block. So if it's maybe, then you want to question it, right? Maybe do a bit of research, maybe, learn a little bit. But ideally, you want to know exactly what you're going to be doing in this growth block so you can protect that time. But if the answer is yes, then obviously it becomes a priority. And the thing is, most coaches are not stuck because they're lazy. They're stuck because they're solving problems that don't exist. This is so common. And the people that I work with at the start when they come on board, they're always trying to solve problems that don't exist yet, right? They're always, say, trying to make the perfect program before they've even got any clients. So they're just going based on how they feel as opposed to like real feedback and real data. So they're optimizing things that don't matter. They're adding complexity instead of removing constraints, more offers, more of this, more of that. They're adding more onto their plate. And this time and energy isn't necessarily going to grow the business. So the fastest way to grow your online coaching business is simple, right? Identify what the bottleneck actually is, look at the data, determine whether the solution requires more volume, more skill, or a better system, and then protect that time in your calendar and direct every available hour towards removing the constraint. Then repeat the process over and over again until you keep growing. Because every level of growth comes with a new bottleneck. That's just the nature of business, right? The people doing like 500K per month, they're actively trying to solve their biggest bottlenecks. They're tracking the data and they're implementing things in order to keep growing. And, these people aren't necessarily the smartest people. They've not done really well in school. They just know the mindset and the approach in order to keep scaling the business. And they're the ones who identify the constraints faster than everyone else and act on them with extreme urgency. So if you want to send me this message on Instagram, right, just say, my biggest constraint is this, and I'll reply with the best training I have to help you solve it. Because obviously I can't go into absolutely everything in this video, but I do have a lot of good trainings on different topics. So just give me a message, tell me what your biggest constraint is, and I'll direct you to my best training so you can help solve it. All right, see you in the next one, guys. Cheers.